U.S. President Donald Trump says he has canceled planned strikes and bombings against Iran, after what he described as high-level approval for talks involving Iran and several regional states. In a post on Truth Social, Trump said discussions with Iran had been brought to what he called the highest level of Iranian leadership and approved. He said the final points had also been approved by the United States, Israel, Saudi Arabia, the UAE, Qatar, Turkey, Pakistan, Bahrain, Kuwait, Jordan, Egypt, and others. But Trump also said the U.S. naval blockade will remain in full force until what he called the transaction is finalized. He said the time and place of signing will be announced shortly. That announcement marks a shift in tone from earlier U.S. threats. Just hours before, Trump had said Washington could target Karg Island, Iran's main oil export hub, and other oil infrastructure points. He had also told Fox News that he would prefer not to hit bridges and power plants in Iran, but warned that any further U.S. attacks would be bigger and more powerful. Iran had responded with defiance. Ebrahim Rezai, the spokesman for the National Security Commission of Iran's parliament, wrote on X that America must surrender. He said Trump had only two paths: surrender or surrender. Iran's foreign ministry also condemned the U.S. attacks, calling them unlawful and criminal. The ministry said Washington had violated the UN Charter and the basic principles of international law, including respect for national sovereignty and territorial integrity. It also said the U.S. strikes had made the April 8 ceasefire practically meaningless, and that responsibility for the consequences rested with U.S. leaders. Iran's foreign minister Abbas Araghchi later spoke to EU foreign policy chief Kaja Kallas, again condemning the U.S. attacks and criticizing what he described as silence from UN member states. But Iran's retaliation has also drawn sharp criticism across the Gulf. Kuwait's defense ministry says its armed forces dealt with 24 hostile drones in Kuwaiti airspace over the past 48 hours. Officials said the attacks caused limited material damage, but no casualties. The UAE condemned what it called hostile Iranian missile and drone attacks on Bahrain, Kuwait, and Jordan, saying they violated the sovereignty of those states and threatened their security. Saudi Arabia also condemned Iran's retaliatory attacks, saying continued strikes would only worsen regional tensions. Riyadh called for de-escalation and a return to diplomatic efforts, including talks mediated by Pakistan and Qatar. Qatar also condemned the attacks on Jordan, Kuwait, and Bahrain, calling them a breach of international law and expressing full solidarity with the three countries. At the same time, several major powers are urging the US and Iran to return to negotiations. China has called for all military action in the Middle East to stop immediately, urging the parties to return to dialogue and respond to mediation efforts. Russia has also called for restraint. Kremlin spokesperson Dmitry Peskov said Washington and Tehran should return to the negotiating table, warning that further escalation could have negative consequences for the region and the global economy. Turkey's foreign minister, Hakan Fidan, said Iran and the US must stop renewed attacks and resume talks to avoid further escalation. Pakistan's deputy prime minister and foreign minister Ishaq Dar also spoke to Fidan by phone. Pakistan's foreign ministry said both sides underlined the importance of dialogue and restraint, and expressed hope for an early understanding among all parties. But even as Trump says strikes have been cancelled, the U.S. blockade remains a major pressure point. U.S. Central Command says it disabled an oil tanker in the Gulf of Oman after the vessel allegedly violated the blockade against Iran by attempting to transport Iranian oil. CENTCOM said a U.S. aircraft fired 2 Hellfire missiles into the engine room of the Guinea-Bissau flagged M/T Jalvier after the crew allegedly failed to comply with directions from U.S. forces. It said the Jalvier was the third commercial vessel disabled this week, after the Palau-flagged M/T Marivex and M/T Setabello were disabled earlier. According to CENTCOM, U.S. forces have disabled 9 non-compliant vessels since the blockade began on April 13. It says 135 ships have been redirected, while 42 vessels carrying humanitarian aid have been allowed to pass. The latest developments point to a pause in one part of the escalation, but not an end to the crisis. Trump says planned strikes have been cancelled. Iran says U.S. attacks have already damaged the ceasefire. Gulf states are condemning Iranian retaliation, and the naval blockade remains in place, keeping pressure on one of the world's most sensitive oil and shipping corridors.